Mark, you are somewhat unbearable.
But who wants to be bearable, right?
I had just finished doing a play at Bucks County Playhouse, and Henry Bergstrom Russell got me that job. And then he called me. I was just getting ready to leave New York and go back to LA, and he called me and said, there's this very interesting independent film, and a really talented guy. He got money from IFP to make it, and he wants to add this character. Would you consider doing it? I was, of course, yeah, I love independent film. Basically, we spent an entire day kind of hashing out what she would be doing. And we were adding this scene of me driving Mark to New York and coming into the city with him, and then we would be adding later all of these scenes of me calling, and so we kind of wrote it that day. We kind of hashed it out and sort of wrote the character. And Mark and I hit it off like that right away. And I don't know whether I'm just motherly or not, but I immediately wanted to adopt him.
I love my son!
I have a gay son, and he's a stand-up comic actor in New York who's doing pretty well. Joe Castlebaker. He has a following, apparently, on Twitter. And so Joe has a beat-up bumper car in Brooklyn, and so we used his beat-up, really beat-up Prius, and we just drove up and down this road in Long Island and put the camera hanging off his left window and then off his right window, which seemed really precarious, particularly when there were maybe trucks coming by on the other side and I was driving. So I went like driving and trying to do the scene and really hoping nobody hit the camera as we went by. But it was so fun. Mark's character, I should talk about in the film, is you don't really know what his diagnosis would be, but you know that there's something, he's on the spectrum or depressed or anxious, and he's taking Klonopin all the time. One of the things I do is his mother is, oh, here's your bottle of Klonopin, take that. And I know he doesn't belong in Indiana, but you know, he is a character who is really original, sometimes difficult to take, and but that's part of his charm, I think. Of course, I'm his mom, so I get to love him anyway. It must have been one of my first years in New York, and somebody just called and said, do you want to do this walk on? I've never seen it. It's what is it called?
It's now called You Better Watch Out.
You Better Watch Out.
Or Christmas Evil.
Or Christmas Evil.
I think it might be Christmas
I
Evil.
only remember doing a couple of those scenes where I think Brandon, who is the bad guy, is like looking through a window. I remember nothing about it, and I've never seen it.
John Waters loves that movie and plays it at Christmas. He does screenings.
He didn't make it, but he loves it. Really?
People have come back to reappreciate that movie.
Oh no! I just
Because
figured it
it's
would
like a
disappear.
scary
No one
Santa
would ever
movie.
see it. John Waters loves that film.
Loves Christmas Evil, yeah.
Oh my God! I may have to watch it.
I mean, it was almost 40. It was probably 40.
And
years
it really
ago.
wasn't my first film.
What was?
My first film was a Roger Corman film.
Here we stand in the new world. We're gonna make it better. Young enough to start a new way of living.
When I was at SMU, and it was about young people, like everybody in the world, all the older people had died, and only young people were left. And one of his, so he was casting the part of a sorority girl, which I was the opposite. I was like one of the only hippies on campus at that point. So I thought it was pretty funny though. So I tried to dress up as a straight sorority girl that day and went and met him. And I don't think I had any lines, but he met me, he asked me some questions, and he said, great. And I got $25.
That's pretty good money at the time.
Very happy about it. My first paid job as an actor.
And then you were also in another cult classic movie, or a movie that maybe people are more familiar with the name than
Chud. Which they cut me out of. Well, okay, now Chud was done by a friend of mine, Doug Cheek. And Doug just got all his friends together to make this film. And so I was married at the time to Ray Baker. And so he said, will you come and be in this film? So we were like, yeah, whatever. So we played annoying advertising executives. And some scene, I don't even remember. And so we did that. And then when he called us up at the end, he said, we have to cut your scene out. I was like, whatever. And they still list us as being in the film, but we're not. So all of these things I was doing when I was just first in New York, and I was lucky to get a walk-on in anything. So they were literally just walk-on things.
Another movie you were in, Parent Trap 3, you played kind of like an uptight
Oh, that was so fun.
To see
And
more.
Ray and I got to do a movie together. We were married then. And it was the first time we ever had like seats with our names on them next to each other. So I still have the picture of our first chairs with our names on them next to each other. So I just sort of remember that. Haley was so lovely. I'd grown up with her, just adoring her. And I was so excited to work with her. And she just couldn't have been nicer. Couldn't have been nicer. And then I later, that was, you know, Parent Trap 3, so we had triplets in that film. And then later I did Double Trouble, which was my first series for Norman Lear with twins. And then I gave birth to twins. So I thought, I guess I'm just destined to do multiples everywhere. We had done the first season, and it didn't go very well, and our contracts all ran out. And then I was doing the Beth Henley's The Miss Firecracker contest in New York. We opened off-Broadway at the Manhattan Theater Club. It was a huge success. It was Holly Hunter and Margot Martindale and Marklyn Baker, and it was it was a fantastic cast, and I was so thrilled to be in that. And we were getting ready to move to another bigger off-Broadway theater. And they came back to me and said, well, the reruns in the summer did so well, we want to go back and do the show again. So we want to renew your contract because it was over. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And because it was really kind of a stupid show. And they were like, what? And I went, no, I want to stay and do this off-Broadway show and move it. I'd never really become an actress to make money, which my father, by the way, never understood. And so I was like, no, it's not about money. I don't want to know. And then even my agent got on the phone and she was like, they're going to offer you $30,000 a week. And I was like, don't mention figures, please. I said, just don't tell me. And she said, Brandon Tartikoff wants you to do that. And I was like, I'm not doing it. Which came really in handy later when I was renegotiating my contract in Home Improvement. Granted, yeah, people have problems with his politics, but Tim is an actor. And I was so surprised when I got in there and just started working with him because right away, he was so reactive. You know, and by that I mean emotionally open. He listens. And you know, all actors have trouble sometimes. We're so busy worrying about what we're doing, we're not really listening to the other actor, much less being open to actually just our first response to that. Tim was like that. Tim was like that from the beginning. I mean, I went in and everybody was nervous because somebody had just been fired and the kids were all like, am I going to get fired? I mean, the first day it was, and I was kind of happy because I had just given birth to twins 3 months before and been in bed for 4 months and they'd had colic for the whole 3 months and it had been, you know, and I was like back to acting. So it was kind of like, oh, this is fun. And I was just amazed at the way that he listened and how alive he was. And then the more we rehearsed, the more I found out and the more we worked together within a couple of episodes. The first time that I got upset and had to cry in a scene, this is a story that he tells in a different way, which is interesting, but I was crying in the scene, I think it was the bathroom scene, where I move and I have to go to a hotel, and I come back after I've moved the hotel, and I'm so sorry, and I'm like, I'm so sorry I left, and we have a little makeup scene, and I start to cry, and well, the first time we did the scene, and I was hugging him, saying, and I start to cry, he started to cry. It moved him, and he started to cry, and then that freaked him out so much that he stopped everything, and he was like, wait a minute, she's really upset. And John Pasquin, who was our wonderful director the whole first, I think, year and a half or 2 years, he goes, Tim, she's acting. And, you know, he had to stop it because he was upset about his own reaction, and it scared him. And he just needed the time to kind of collect himself because he was so shocked, I think, at his own reaction. But it was fantastic. And when I saw that, I knew. I went, he's always going to be there. You know, he's always going to be listening. He's going to be responding. He's there. And you don't get that, I think, in many stand-ups. And so, yeah, from the beginning, I always thought that Tim didn't get the credit that he deserved for being the actor that he is, in addition to being the stand-up.
Thornton, next time you decide to wait for the cavalry, you better be damn sure that your patient's not going to die first.
I loved doing that show. First of all, I loved pretending to be a doctor because I loved faking surgery. I loved it. It was so interesting. We had the real operation up here, and I'd be like, wow, look at that. And then baking it was so fun. And so I loved all of that. And I loved that I could just go to work and act and go home. You know, when you do a drama, there's no audience. There's not all these comedy writers going crazy about, we don't have enough laughs, and Suits going, you don't have enough laughs. And that pressure, like they think you're a baseball player. You know, when you do, I really don't want to do sitcoms. I usually turn down those auditions because they are crazy.
Towards the end of the Home Improvement one, you also did Yuli's Gold,
That was,
which like is a total opposite end of the coin, opposite end of the spectrum kind of thing.
You don't approve, do you?
I didn't say anything.
I can tell. You're an old-fashioned ties that bind kind of guy.
well, first of all, I was so lucky because Victor Nunez is the only director who's ever won Sundance twice, I think, and is so generous. You know, you would think that a man who, directs, writes, produces, operates the camera, is doing all of that would be some sort of huge egomaniac, but you couldn't find a more humble person or a more inclusive and person who wants to listen to everyone, who listens to everyone's ideas. He's going to do what he is wanting to do, but he was so kind. There was that long scene that Peter and I had across the table from each other, and we shot that really very few times, but I felt that I was walking on glass. I felt like everything we were doing in that scene was so fragile that it was so lovely to do, and I really felt like it was so delicate, this very delicate dance we did together in that scene. And the whole experience of doing the film was like that. And we had no idea. We were so surprised by the success of the film. It was really wonderful.
I need to make some calls.
Senator Vinnick's office.
Well, we could use some help with the boxes.
So Royce, huh?
Maybe.
Is he gonna run for president?
He knows he doesn't have a chance, but I told him to keep the buzz going. It'll help with the fundraising.
And then West Wing came along. And it was like, will you do these guest shots playing Alda's chief of staff? It was the end of the 7th year of the show. Just do these 2 or 3 episodes, whatever it was. I was like, oh God, I can't turn that down. Little did I know that each episode was 3 weeks, that I never knew when they were going to happen, and that it was going to be that demanding. And that it was going to go into the whole next year. So I ended up doing 2 years of the show and a lot more episodes than I anticipated. Lawrence O'Donnell wrote all my episodes, and I was sort of playing him because he was chief of staff for Tip O'Neill. And so I'm going to give him away here. He would say things to me like, you can't have any reaction. You're not in the room. I'm like, oh, this is so much fun to play. You can't ever show anything. You're the smartest person in the room. You're always the smartest person in the room. And you don't show any emotion. You don't ever show anything. And you don't care about any of these issues. Because when Alan had to give up and, bring in the right-wing person and give up what he really felt about abortion, I was like, doesn't she care about that? Doesn't she care that he's having to give up his morals and what he really... She goes, no. She doesn't care about anything. No, all you care about is winning. You're the chief of staff. You're there to make him win. That's all you care about. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. And then he'd be like, no, you have no reaction. You're in the corner of the room. It's like people don't even know you're there. It's like, oh, great. So that's what I'm playing. That's great. But what I really loved was, you're me. You're the smartest person in the room. It's like, well, that's really great, Lawrence. That was pretty fun.